The Dominion War was one of the deadliest conflicts in Star Trek history. But what if an all-powerful being had interfered? What if Q had stepped in? Would he have stopped the war, or made it worse? Let's just get into it.
Shall we?
Before we delve too deep, a bit of a refresher on the Q and the Dominion War are probably in order, for all two of you who don't know what that is. Also, welcome to the Lore Reloaded, because it's obviously your first time. The Dominion War was an interstellar conflict that spanned the Alpha and Beta quadrants. It pitted the major powers of those quadrants, ultimately becoming known as the Federation Alliance against the Gamma Quadrant's dominant power, the Dominion. It was a bloody affair that ended in a Federation victory after nearly fracturing and destroying the powers of the Alpha and Beta quadrant. The Dominion War changed Starfleet forever, but what if it never happened? What if a godlike entity like Q had stepped in? The Q are many things. Oftentimes, we see the Q as simply a trickster.
I'm forgiven! My brothers and sisters of the Continuum have taken me back. I'm immortal again! Omnipotent again! Swell.
However, even when Q was playing games, these were oftentimes tied to some form of test for humanity in Starfleet, challenging who they were and what they believed in.
At least we're acquainted with the judge, Captain.
Ironically, the more I researched the Q, the more I found how he is either disinterested in directly impacting events, going so far as to scold those who do, or perhaps chooses not to intervene at major junctions due to some form of principle. Maybe the Q have their own prime directive. Q definitively loved chaos. He is possibly the original god of chaos.
Q.
But rarely stops galactic disaster. As I've somewhat noted before, the Q have had multiple chances to assist the Federation. If you don't believe my El-Orian theories, then the Q could have chosen to stop the Borg very easily. Instead, he introduced the Borg and seemingly mocked Picard when they didn't want his help. He just sat back and watched. There had to have been a reason. Again, it could have possibly been due to some Q prime directive, but I think the evidence more supports that he was preparing the Federation for what was out there. He says as much in one of the episodes.
You judge yourselves against the pitiful adversaries you've encountered so far. The Romulans, the Klingons. They're nothing compared to what's waiting. Picard, you are about to move into areas of the galaxy containing wonders more incredible than you can possibly imagine. And terrors to freeze your soul.
A lot of people, myself included, have stated that the Q introduced the Borg so that Starfleet could fight the Dominion. This may be true, but why stop there? What if the Q was incrementally preparing the Federation for the next test, the next challenge? If that were the case, then he would likely do what he always did when the big decisions had to be made. Nothing.
You're not afraid of a little space-time continuum meddling, are you, Cadet? No, I thought not. Shall we?
But, for the sake of argument, let's say that the Q had stepped into the Dominion War. How would that have happened? What would have occurred? There are a few ways that this could have played out. Let's start with the most obvious one.
Where are they?
According to their warp signatures, they should be right there.
Some kind of cloaking device?
I didn't know the Dominion had them.
The easiest possibility, Q simply snaps his fingers and the Dominion War is over. No more fleets, no more battles. The Founders suddenly embrace pacifism. The Federation wins without suffering any losses. Starfleet never gets militarized, keeping its utopian ideals intact. Cardassia is never destroyed and billions of lives are saved. But here's where it gets complicated. Would the Federation still be strong? Without the experience of war, Starfleet might completely be unprepared for future threats, like future engagements with the Borg or Species 8472. Would other powers fear them? If Q's intervention is obvious, the Romulans and Klingons might question whether the Federation secretly has divine allies. Could this trigger new wars over former Dominion space? Additionally, could the Romulans and Klingons find their own divine allies, making the war even worse? Would Starfleet officers accept this? Many of them fought, suffered, and lost comrades in battle. How would they feel knowing that Q erased their sacrifices in a complete instant, especially if those people never came back? At first glance, ending the war seems like a blessing, but in reality, it could destabilize the entire quadrant, if not in the entire universe. Considering that, let's get a little weird.
All those escape pods. So small. So vulnerable.
What if Q sided with the Dominion just to see what would happen? The Dominion becomes unstoppable. Q wipes out the Federation's entire Starfleet just for fun. The Founders declare Q their equals, or perhaps the new god. This could happen for a number of reasons. Maybe the Qs think humans are too arrogant, so he decides to see what happens when they truly lose. Maybe he enjoys the Dominion's authoritarian efficiency and wants to test it against Starfleet's chaotic, democratic structure. The consequences? Well, Starfleet is wiped out. A single Q can manipulate time and space. He could erase Earth itself from existence. The Founders become overconfident. If they truly believe Q is on their side, they might try to rule beyond the Alpha Quadrant, triggering even more chaos. Would the Q continuum even allow this? We've seen before, just take a look at Death Wish, that the Q have rules about interference. Could this start a civil war between the Q? If Q took the Dominion's side, the only possible outcome is total devastation. Though if you listen to Bashir, they might be better for it.
As soon as I return to Deep Space Nine.
That won't be necessary. You're with us now.
And the last is Q making Sisko a god. Like a literal god, not a prophet's god, but a Q-like entity. Of all the possibilities, this might be the most interesting. What if Q didn't stop the war, but instead elevated Sisko? Sisko gains godlike powers, able to reshape reality itself, no longer just space Jesus. He can instantly defeat the Dominion, but at a cost. Would he be tempted to rewrite history? We know Q loves testing individual humans. He did it with Picard in Tapestry, giving him a second chance at life. What if he did the same with Sisko? What if he gave him the ability to win the war in a single moment? This raises huge questions. Would Sisko take the power? If he could end all suffering instantly, could he refuse? What would the prophets do? Sisko is already their emissary. If Q interferes, would this create a war between the Q and the wormhole aliens? And what happens after the war? If Sisko rewrites reality, does he remain human or does he become something else? Something beyond Starfleet? Q tempting Sisko with godhood might be the most plausible scenario, and the one with the biggest consequences when you think about it.
In any case, I'll be watching. And if you're very lucky, I'll drop by to say hello from time to time.
At the end of the day, Q could have ended the Dominion War in an instant, but that's not what he does. He doesn't save humanity. He forces them to prove they're worth saving. Every major interaction he's had with Starfleet has been a test, whether it was throwing them into Borg space, altering Picard's past, or challenging Janeway's sense of morality. The question isn't whether Q could have intervened, it's whether he saw any reason to. If Q had stepped in, the war might have ended swiftly, but it would have left humanity weaker for it. The struggle against the Dominion shaped the Federation in ways that no omnipotent being could have orchestrated. It forced Starfleet to abandon its complacency, adapt to a changing political landscape, and make difficult choices that would define its future. If Q had removed that challenge, would the Federation have learned anything? Would they have been prepared for the next existential threat that came their way? But then there's the counter-argument. What if Q already was intervening, just in ways we couldn't see? Maybe he didn't need to snap his fingers because, from his perspective, the Dominion War was already playing out exactly as it needed to. Maybe he was testing Sisko in ways beyond human comprehension, watching how he navigated the war, how he led, how he struggled, and maybe, just maybe, that was the real lesson. The question isn't whether Q could have changed history. It's whether history was already unfolding exactly as he intended. So what do you think? Should Q have intervened, or would that have ruined the war's impact on Starfleet? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.